TEXTJOIN is a fabulous way about that you can concatenate or list a range of values together, including a delimiting character, such as a space or comma, and either include or exclude blank spaces between, but you can bring those cells together and create a new value. Let me show you what I mean in terms of the existing way that we would normally handle concatenation. Now, if you've never heard of the concatenation, what that word means is it means to take separate items and to join them together so that they form a new item. For example, here we've got our address 1, address 2, city, state, and zip. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create a new value that put all of these together. Maybe it's for a mailing label or something like that. Totally simple. We would just do this in the traditional way of handling Excel with the ampersand or with the concatenate, the full value, the full word function. But most folks, when they want to add things together, they will use that concatenation. And so we can go ahead and use an ampersand here, and we can put all these different items together like this, and we end up with a full list of those 5 things: our address 1, 2, city, state, and zip. Now, does anybody see something wrong with this? Well, as you should see, is that they are all mashed together, but there's no separation. There's no delimiter. Typically, if we were, for example, to see a full address, we would expect something like a comma and a space to appear inside of that value. Well, under traditional concatenation procedures, what we would literally have to do is to manually put those values in here. So if I wanted to put a space between something, I would literally have to manually type those in, just like you see here, with another concatenation, another ampersand, a double quote, comma, and another ampersand to essentially join those different items together. And so that is how we would, for example, do something like this, where we would manually add in that space and that comma. Now, everything works great until you get into an optional field like this with address 2. Notice with address 2, we end up with a double comma there. Now, how would we traditionally handle this? Well, the way that we would traditionally handle this would be through something like a if statement, where we would test to see if address 2 is empty, and if so, exclude that comma. Well, that's fine if you're doing 2 values or 3 values, but it starts to get pretty hairy if you start having 5 or 6 additional fields that you're looking to add together. And so this isn't a very good way of doing it. Does it work? Absolutely. Should you do it? Yeah, if it's 1 or 2, but there's a much better way of handling this, and this is with the TEXTJOIN function. Now, the TEXTJOIN function takes 3 arguments: what you want to delimitate with, what to do if a cell is blank, and then what values you want to add together. So we're going to go ahead and start this off with an equal sign. We're going to say TEXTJOIN. Okay, and the first thing is our delimiter here. Now, for this particular scenario where we've got address information, I want to use a comma and a space, just like before. Now, anytime we're dealing with text inside of a formula, I want you to hard code this to your brain. Anytime that we're dealing with text here, we always will use a double quote. Double quote inside of Excel means, hey, Excel, don't treat this like a formula. Instead, treat it like text. So make sure that you always use Excel with double quotes inside of it, versus SQL, versus other operations where you would use a single quote. So we're going to say double quote, comma, space, double quote like this. And so every time it sees this value here, it's going to go ahead and add a comma and a space. The next thing is going to be what to do with empty cells. So in this instance, I want it to ignore those empty cells, so that in row 3 here, where we have an empty address 2, we don't end up with that double comma business that we saw before. So we're going to go ahead and say, do not include empty cells. Now, the third parameter here is going to be what values we want to be included. Now, I can do this discrete like this, where essentially I can say A2, B2, C2, so on and so forth. So if you've got things spreading across a multiple separate sections of your worksheet, well, you can go ahead and point it at an array, and it'll go ahead and you can pull just those cells. Or you can point it at a range, in this case A2 to E2 like this, and sure enough there, we end up with a very clean address. So that is what that text join function looks like. And if we come on over here, here's an example. If you look at the second worksheet here, this is with that same formula, but using false here. Works exactly the same, except it includes any blank cells that might pop up. So easy peasy. This is a much better way of being able to join text together without having to create a whole bunch of messy logic with respect to joining these cells together.